If your brokerage is also trying to scale, here are some tips about what your TMS needs to be. Cloud-based for easy access anywhere. Have all your broker tools on one screen. Seamless integrations with all load boards and capacity tools. Built for both truckload and LTL loads. Free to update. And no lag time, no crashes, with easy to export highly detailed data reporting. Schedule a demo now and ask about getting your first month free.
I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been winning all the war. And I've been shutting down the stars.
And welcome to this week. And Put That Coffee Down, the Freight Sales Podcast for closers. My name's Kevin Hill. I'm your host today. And we have a very special guest, Kurtis Tryber from EXO Freight will be joining us here in a second. But before we get started, let's talk a little bit about freight tech. Kurtis knows all about freight tech. We'll talk a little bit about freight tech once he comes on. But FreightWaves now has nominations open for the Freight Tech 100 Awards. They opened earlier this month, July 5th. They close August 26th. So go in, nominate yourself. Nominate a vendor that you like. Nominate friends and partners. And nominate everyone. And we will tabulate that. We will assemble those. We'll send it out to our list and panel of voters who are titans of the freight tech and freight industry. And we will announce those live on stage here in Chattanooga, Tennessee on November 3rd, which is the third and final day of F3, the Future of Freight Festival that we'll be holding here in Chattanooga. So if you haven't bought a ticket yet, go buy a ticket to F3. Come out and you'll be able to see the presentation in person on day 3. So, let's do Tai real quick. So, Tai TMS saves 3PLs and brokers an average of over 2 hours a day per rep with a smooth workflow designed to help you speed up your process and scale the growth of your brokerage. With a centralized platform integrated with your load boards, rating tools, and carrier compliance, Tai TMS customers see an average 30% increase in monthly shipment volume. Visit Tai-Software.com today to schedule a demo. So without any further ado, we're going to talk about solving problems today and how that's a key to success in life, whether it's sales or whatever it may be. It is taking big, hairy, complex problems and being able to really break it down and solve those and getting really good at it. And that's a key as well. So I'm going to bring on Kurtis Tryber. He's a CEO and co-founder of EXO Freight here on the show with me right now. Kurtis, great to see you again.
Yeah. Hey, Kevin, thanks for having me on. I think the last time I was on this show, I was wearing a different shirt, but now wearing the EXO Freight flag.
That is right. You're wearing a different shirt, and it was a different time and different place. It was right when the lockdowns were starting to happen and people were going home, and you'd flown down and you'd been doing meetings in Atlanta and a few in Chattanooga, I think. And you're getting canceled a little bit just because they weren't accepting visitors anymore.
Yeah. It was right when I was doing a road show, visiting current customers at my last company, and right when I got to Chattanooga, the pandemic had started, and I was getting on a plane as quickly as possible back to San Francisco.
Exactly right. Yeah, but now you're not in San Francisco anymore. You're wearing a different shirt. Tell us a little bit about EXO Freight, what you specialize in, and what you're up to.
Yeah. So shortly after that pandemic, my brother and I launched EXO Freight. EXO Freight's a open deck marketplace, or is a marketplace for open deck shipping. So, we're the digital freight brokerage focused on the flatbed side of the market. Founded it, just after that pandemic started in about May 2020, and growing ever since. So now we've got our main headquarter location just outside of Detroit in Royal Oak. We're at about 62 people and growing ever since.
So, and that's a good segue into and to what we're going to be talking about today. It comes from an article, Fast Company. I don't know if you're familiar with that publication, and it's an excerpt. It's written by A.J. Jacobs, but it's an excerpt of his book, The Puzzler. One man's quest to solve the most baffling puzzles ever, from crosswords to just jigsaws to the meaning of life. And we'll segue in because there's 5 points here of how to solve problems. And when you talk about having a marketplace or anything for open deck, I mean that is a series of puzzles that you have to solve one by one, really to address the entire market. Because I did a lot of open deck, flatbed loads as a freight broker, and each one is completely different, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that those are probably, those are like some of the core day-to-day operational problems we face, right? As we work with customers, as we work with carriers. But certainly, building a company that manages those complications and exceptions, along with building all of the technology from the ground up and all of the products and features to support the customer and the carrier throughout the process. It's just it's definitely a mountain, to say the least, right? We've definitely chose a very hard problem to solve, and then have to build all the technology, to actually help us solve those problems or to solve the problem.
That's where the profits lay, right? The hard problems that no one else wants to solve or can solve, and that's where the riches are in those niches. But let's go through the 5 steps. Let's go through the 5 steps. And the first step here, and this is really about problems that seem too daunting, too hairy for you to even address. And sometimes it's stumbling blocks a little bit that are inconveniences. But the first rule is don't get furious, get curious.
Yeah.
And I think that's go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that we probably face that every day, right? I mean, it's weird to understand, like, some of our customers on some of the things that they allow us to do, and ultimately, like, as well as internal operations, like every day, like, we actually have to be asking like deeper questions of like, why do we do it this way, or why should we do it this way, or why have we always done it this way? And like a lot of people's response is, that's how we've always done it, or that's how the customer wants us to do it. But I think for our company, it's like, that's what helps us grow. That's what helps us like productize some of those problems. If we start to really dig deep on a specific problem and ask very pointed questions, the result is, allows us to build something to solve, what I mean? To like keep pushing us forward. So we're not just like pushing the same rock up the same hill every single day, right? Like if we ask those pointed questions, if we get to the core problems, or the core reason why those problems arise, then we can productize it. Then we can build a piece of our TMS, or maybe it's a carrier solution or a shipper solution that allows us to like move faster and not have to just come back and, again, that same rock up the same hill every single day.
Yeah, I think a lot of people throw up their hands. The first obstacle on a problem that they just give up, or that they get so upset that they can't solve anything. They can't think about things clearly. And it reminds me of a book that I read a few years ago. I always recommend it. It's The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, right? And part of the basis of the book, I don't know if you've read it or not, but part of the basis of the book and the thought process is that life is problems. Life is a series of problems that need to be solved, and happiness comes from solving those problems. So if you're not solving problems, then you're going to be unhappy. And this is what really, and basically part of that is being curious, enjoying the problems, because you get to control your own problems. You get to make those choices. No matter what you do, you're always going to have problems, but you get to choose the obstacles and problems that you want to tackle. And if you enjoy solving those puzzles, you're going to be way better off than trying to deal with problems that you don't want to deal with.
I think it also gives you like a sense of worth too, right? If you can accomplish, like at our company, we always break things down into, as an example, objectives and key results. Okay. The objective is to do X, right? But okay, that's a pretty daunting task. And when I go back to like the sense of worth, thinking about our people, or this could be anybody, this could be just in your life, right? If you can break down a large objective, I want to do X, Y, Z by this date, into like 6 or 7 smaller, like achievable milestones, getting to the objective or finishing the objective is like far more rewarding, right? Because you had small wins along the way.
It is far more rewarding, and you go into the second tip for solving complex problems is chop your problem up into little bits, right?
Yeah.
And then the whole cliche of how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. It goes right into that, but that is taking a larger goal and chopping it up into a staircase, right? A staircase of smaller goals that you do. I always call it activity, right? I always think about activity. If I take a goal, I'll break it down to the most minuscule activity. How much I have to do of that, which leads to this, which leads to that, which leads to other, and all of a sudden, after when you complete all those, if you put in the work and go back to sales, it's all about activity, right? If you're always active, if you're hitting that, if you're doing a good job doing that, not going through the motions, but if you're really enjoying those daily activities, then the payoff's going to get there.
Well, I think if you like you mentioned, kind of like relating it back to sales, I think even, again, I'm doing a much different role today, but certainly always doing, enterprise sales to some degree. And I think that if you're thinking about it, if you're a salesperson today, being able to break down a sale and into like different milestones or different phases actually will help you achieve a far higher success rate, like overall, right? Like, your close rate will actually go up if you say, hey, whenever I'm breaking down, maybe the process and the milestones change, but like you should understand on the first call with a customer is not the time to close them. It's actually the time to achieve, maybe getting 3 pain points. And then, the next call is understanding, for example, okay, who are my stakeholders? Or maybe doing it all in the same call. But again, it's like saying, I can't close the deal until I achieve, X, Y, and Z. And so closing is now, far easier in that sense, because it's now just saying, okay, well, as long as I can check these 6 boxes, like it should result in a close, or you have at least a higher probability, and you can actually control the outcome because you're saying, if I won, it's because I hit these 6 check boxes. If I lost but still hit 6 check boxes, like maybe that's a true no. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Again, you're exactly right about that. It's breaking that into the sales process, and it goes back to something what we talk about is we have the selling process, right? And that's internal, and those are the stages that you're supposed to check those boxes off. But that's much different than the buying process. Your buyer's process, you have to go through that process with them no matter what, or 99 out of 100 times. Once you get to the closing stage, they're going to say no because you haven't taken them through the process they need to do to say yes.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
So, okay, number 3 here is turn the puzzle upside down or backwards or any other way. I think this is a key to quite a bit of it is you have to be creative because a lot of problems haven't been solved before. I think a lot of problems are unique to your own situation, right? So EXO Freight has this, similar problems to every other company, but they're unique because of the variables in play. So no one else can solve your problem. You've got to do it, and you've got to be as creative as possible to make it through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could probably give you 100 examples of very unique, breaking down the puzzle and kind of flipping it on its head, especially in our business, right? But I mean, the age-old problem with this is really like with any like freight brokerage or like marketplace style business is you sort of have this, you're always constrained, for us specifically, like always constrained on like one side of our marketplace, right? So like, for us, it's always the capacity side that's more constrained. So you could do two ways. You could say, well, like that's life and we're just gonna have to power through that and just deal with it. Or, for us, like we're actually thinking of some really creative ways that haven't really been done before and working reverse to say, okay, like what is actually the problem and why is capacity scarce or why is there not enough supply? Okay, now we've understood why and working all the way back up to a solution. We do that every day. Like that's just like a minor example, but I mean, we do it with our product. Why, just in our TMS, even for our internal users, I mean, there's a number of different ways, but I mean, like that's actually what makes this the most fun part of the job is like taking these, sort of these big, like inconceivable problems to how do we overcome them? And like, if we just work backwards, we always seem to come to some solution that makes sense. And I think you could apply that, to every part of your life.
You can, and I think that's a key that you kind of mentioned there is that these aren't once a week type of tips for problems. You have problems every minute of every day and basically every second, so they are constant. And the more you practice these 5 tips and really enjoying solving problems and putting yourself in a position to solve the problems that you want to solve and get yourself out of the problems that you don't want to solve, the happier you're going to be. And you know what? Copying your competitors, copying what they're doing is a recipe for failure in a lot of ways. And that this part of being creative, trying something new, coming up with a new solution to an old problem, right? Capacity in the flatbed market, but you have to really be creative and try a number of different things and learn from each thing that doesn't work, because the problems in the solutions in there somewhere. It just takes time to define it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we always talk about is like, if we're going to try to win and try to beat this problem, for example, sometimes it's a bet. Sometimes you may have one or two bets out there, and like there's a level of risk that you have to accept, understanding that sometimes the solution is not like whatever you try, it may not pay off, but like if you're not even willing to accept the risk of attempting to solve that, you're probably not going to solve it, right? You're probably just going to say, hey, this is the way it's going to be. Like we're too risk averse to like try a few bets that may or may not pay off, but like ultimately, if 3 bets don't pay off, now we actually know what doesn't work, and we can keep iterating, and that's actually part of the process.
Problem solving,
right? Yep.
Yeah, the process of problem solving. I mean, you can have everything planned out perfectly, and it doesn't work out. And just remember that as I don't know if Sun Tzu or who said it, but as a battle plan, but it works well in business. Is that no business plan ever survives contact with the customer. So
100%.
Whatever you think of is the perfect plan, and this is how we're going to do it. It is going to, as soon as you take it out into the marketplace, it's going to get destroyed.
Yes.
In usually very good ways, right? And then you pivot from there and you figure out, and that's part of the process.
Yeah, we've released a number of, especially like on the product side of our business, software side. We've seen a number of those things. I'll give you like a really kind of a funny example that I joke about now is when we were building our carrier portal. We had our engineering team, our product team, our design team, very focused on delivering the perfect experience for a carrier when interacting with EXO Freight. And from a design, like from a ideation and on paper, I think we nailed it. On the day of the release, what we noticed was 50% of users were dropping off almost immediately. And as you say, the plan, the second it made contact with a customer, sort of never survives or fell apart. Somebody forgot to deploy like one last PR for the mobile version. So anybody in the mobile immediately, had to, just didn't work. Right. And so it's like a funny example of for us, we had it mapped out perfectly, on the execution side. Maybe we had a couple of gaps, right? That's all now solved and fixed, right? But it's to your point. I think that's a clear example of how the plan did not necessarily make it to the customer or potentially fell apart right at the final stage when it hit the hands of the users.
Exactly right. I mean, and it takes us to be supremely flexible, being ready to pivot. I think there's a lot of naysayers out there. Stay away from naysayers who will tell you that, and that not necessarily that this won't work or this can't happen, but that they're always cheering the failures, right? Like, of course, this will never work. Well, maybe not, but you have to go through the process. You have to go through the process so you can have a button down plan. And as soon as you take it out, there are going to be flaws in it. There always is. No one's perfect. And enjoy the flaws, because those flaws are going to point out we didn't think about, we didn't take account for, execution problems, and you're just going to get better after that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm sure all companies face this, or, just people in general, like the naysayers, right? Hey, we're going to do this. And you got 10 people saying, hey, it's not going to work for XYZ reason. But I think what they fail to sort of realize is like, yeah, maybe you've seen it over there and it didn't, like, I mean, the word work, very subjective, like maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. I think anybody could, depending on who you ask, right? But the amount of learning that occurs in those experiences is like far more valuable. Like, hey, I understand you've got 6 reasons why this doesn't work, but like, what don't we know, right? And I think there's there's a picture that always goes around of like a World War II airplane, and it talks about where when the planes were coming back, they would always wonder, why they would come back with bullet holes, and so they were thinking about, okay, the bullet holes are here, here, and here on the wings. Let's reinforce those areas of the wings so there's no more bullet holes. Well, what they actually realized is, wait a second, what about the planes that didn't come back? Where were those bullet holes? And that's actually where we reinforce. We don't care where the bullet holes are on the planes that came back. We care about where the bullet holes are on the planes that didn't come back. So it's like a totally reverse way of thinking. And I think that's ultimately one of the greatest problem solving things that I've ever seen, right? It's like, that makes total sense. Like, who cares? These planes were made it back, so clearly it wasn't that big of a problem, right?
Exactly right. You're solving a minor problem, but you're overlooking the major problem, the major flaw that really would move the needle, right? If all the planes came back with bullet holes in the wings, right? The fact that none went down. They all came back, though, right? That's what you want. Where they're shot doesn't matter as long as they make it back. Definitely. The fifth point here is find the toehold. I think we've been talking about this kind of throughout. Is breaking it down to its most elemental thing that you can actually do today. That activity, whatever it may be. Breaking it down, Abe Lincoln kind of said this as well. As part of the problem-solving process is, if you're going to chop down a tree, you're going to spend 90% of your time sharpening your axe and 10% of the time cutting. So if it takes you some time to find that entry point, the detail that everyone else missed, and that's the reason why it doesn't work, spend that time, do that, be patient, but don't be too patient, right? Don't do analysis by paralysis. Do real analysis and tinker around while you go.
When I was going through Y Combinator, right, and we're building a company inside of a startup accelerator, this was like a big thing that they would preach day in and day out. You could spend the entire 3 months of Y Combinator like trying to like solve this massive complex problem and building all the products and features to go through and solve, something that was huge. Or, you could, they're always focused on revenue, for example, right? So you could spend your 3 months doing that, or you could spend your 3 months, looking for a very small solvable problem today that will generate you, some significant revenue. That's, an MVP. Maybe it's not the full solution. It doesn't have every feature that your end customer would need, but like, does it have the absolute bare minimum to achieve some level of, hey, you're on the right path. Hey, this is a success. Now we just need to add features. And it's something that they preach every day. And that's why some of those companies are able to move so fast, is because they're sort of preaching the toehold, right? Find the smallest, solvable, immediate problem that gets you at least in the door, because you have time to build the rest of it, right? And so I think if you kind of think about that, even for people that are in the sales process, as you talk with a customer, like, you are not going to solve all their problems during the front end of a sales process. But if you can zero in on, maybe one or two, like, really, really large pain points, like, you can get a yes, and then you have lots of time to go in the future, and work with the customer beyond.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for coming by, Kurtis. This is always a pleasure seeing you and talking to you. And if you haven't checked out EXO Freight, go check out EXO Freight and what these guys, and congratulations on the raise that you did earlier this year.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. And always happy to be on, Kevin.
Thank you, Kurtis. And for everyone else, this is wraps it for this week. Put that coffee down. You can catch us every Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on FreightWaves TV.
I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been winning all the war. And I've been shutting down the store.